Dawn breaks over the temple of Heliopolis. A naked priest stands on the sacred platform before hundreds of worshippers, including families with young children. He begins performing a ritual act of creation, loudly, publicly, and everyone cheers. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where priests had to reach divine climax every morning or the sun wouldn't rise. You thought you knew about Egyptian civilization? Forget everything. The reality was systematic sexual extremism so disturbing that it makes Roman orgies look like Sunday school. These 5 practices will shatter everything you thought you knew about history's most mysterious civilization. Let's start with the ritual that pushed divine kingship to its physical limit, a public test of power, endurance, and cosmic fertility. 50,000 Egyptians packed the ceremonial grounds, screaming sexual encouragements at their naked pharaoh. Amenhotep III, overweight and arthritic at 52, stands before them with his genitals glistening with sacred oils, desperately trying to maintain an erection while running around stone markers. This was the Sed Festival, Egypt's most bizarre combination of political rally and public sexual humiliation. Picture the elaborate preparations. For weeks beforehand, priests would fast and purify themselves. The ceremonial grounds would be decorated with giant phallus symbols carved from granite. Exotic animals would be sacrificed. Bulls, crocodiles, even sacred cats. Their blood mixed with aphrodisiac herbs. After 30 years of rule, every pharaoh faced this ultimate test. The ceremony began before dawn with ritual purification. Naked priests would massage the pharaoh's entire body with oils made from ground beetles, crocodile reproductive organs, and fermented honey. His genitals received special attention, anointed with substances believed to maintain arousal for hours. The crowd wasn't just watching, they were participating in cosmic renewal. Families would travel for months to attend, setting up camps around Memphis. Merchants sold food, wine, and aphrodisiac potions. Children were given wooden phallus toys to wave during the ceremony. The entire empire ground to a halt for this single day when their god-king had to prove his sexual worthiness. The running course stretched for miles, marked by ancient boundary stones that represented Egypt's borders. As the pharaoh ran, struggling to maintain his erection, the crowd would surge alongside him, screaming encouragements that archaeologists still find carved into festival sites. "Show us your divine rod, and let your seed flow for Egypt." Here's the part that would break any modern man. Failure meant death. Pharaoh Pepi II ruled for 94 years, but eventually became too old to perform. Court documents describe his final, humiliating collapse, stumbling naked in front of his people, unable to maintain arousal, his own guards having to carry him away, while the crowd fell silent in horror. Within weeks, he was dead, officially from natural causes, but everyone knew the truth. When you can't get it up for Egypt, Egypt gets rid of you. You thought public sexual humiliation was the ultimate degradation. That was nothing compared to what Egyptians did to ensure their pharaohs could keep performing sexually, even after death. The embalming chamber reeks of death and chemicals. Pharaoh Ramesses II lies on the preparation table, deceased for 3 days, but the chief embalmer approaches with specialized tools focused on one organ, the royal penis. It must be artificially erected and enhanced, because this dead king has an eternity of sexual service ahead of him. In Egyptian belief, death wasn't rest. It was the beginning of cosmic prostitution. Picture the elaborate mummification process. The pharaoh's body would be soaked in natron salt for 70 days, while priests chanted sexual incantations. But the reproductive organs received special treatment unknown in any other culture. Embalmers would insert wooden splints carved from sacred cedar into the penis, then apply hardening resins mixed with gold dust. The goal was permanent erection. The dead pharaoh needed to be ready for immediate sexual service to goddesses like Isis, Hathor, and Sekhmet. Some embalmers created mechanical devices. hinged penises that could move, hollow shafts for storing sacred fluids, even spring-loaded mechanisms that would activate in the afterlife. Walk through the Valley of the Kings and you'd see the evidence everywhere. Tomb walls covered with explicit instruction manuals showing dead pharaohs with massive reproductive organs, surrounded by goddesses in sexually explicit poses. These weren't decorative art. They were job training materials for the afterlife. The pyramid texts, carved in hieroglyphs, contain detailed sexual performance requirements. Your divine seed shall flow like the Nile in flood. Your sacred rod shall stand firm as an obelisk. The grave goods were equally explicit. Archaeologists have found golden dildos, erotic figurines showing every possible sexual position, and sealed containers holding what chemical analysis reveals to be preserved semen from the pharaoh's lifetime, saved for his use in the afterlife. You thought preparing dead pharaohs for eternal sex was the peak of religious extremism. Wait until you see what living priests did every morning to ensure the sun would rise. Dawn breaks over the temple of Heliopolis. The high priest stands naked on the sacred platform before hundreds of worshippers, including families with young children. He begins performing a ritual act of creation, loudly, publicly, and everyone cheers. This wasn't perverted exhibitionism. This was the most sacred ritual in Egyptian religion. Picture the elaborate preparations that began weeks beforehand. Temple attendants would fast for 40 days, purifying their bodies with special diets of figs, honey, and sacred bread. The ceremonial platform would be scrubbed with water, blessed by 7 different priests, then anointed with oils extracted from rare plants that only grew in the shadow of the pyramids. According to their creation myth, the god Atum created the universe through a divine act of self-union in a single moment of cosmic fulfillment. Every morning, priests reenacted this fundamental act of creation through public sacred solo rites, timing their ritual climax precisely to the sun's appearance on the horizon. If they failed to reach divine release at the exact moment of sunrise, the Egyptians believed the sun might not continue its journey across the sky. The ceremonies were elaborate productions lasting hours, with different temples developing their own specialized variations. At Memphis, priests would collect their divine essence in sacred vessels carved from meteoric stone, then pour it into the Nile during flood season, mixing sacred seed with the life-giving waters. At Karnak, they used carved ritual devices made from cedar wood and blessed by touching them to the sacred statue of Amun-Ra. Some temples employed trained baboons who had been taught to provide assistance, believing that symbolic involvement of nature connected the ritual to the wild forces of creation. The audience wasn't just watching, they were participating in cosmic renewal. Wealthy families would journey for months to attend, setting up elaborate camps around the temple complex. Merchants sold special foods believed to enhance fertility, wine mixed with aphrodisiac herbs, and miniature wooden symbols of vitality for children to wave during the ceremony. The entire region would shut down for these daily rituals, with government officials, farmers, and traders all stopping their work to witness the priest's performance. Here's what breaks your faith in humanity. Rituals were attended by families as part of early religious instruction. This was considered essential spiritual education, like taking your kids to Sunday school. Wealthy families paid enormous sums to secure front-row positions for their children, believing that witnessing the divine ceremony would ensure their own fertility as adults. Temple records show parents bringing infants as young as 6 months old, holding them up so they could see the priest's ritual climax. Imagine explaining to your 5-year-old why the holy man needs to reach divine fulfillment for the sun to rise tomorrow, and why this is the most important lesson they'll ever learn. You thought youth participation in sacred creation rituals was the ultimate corruption of religion. That was just daily worship. Wait until you see the systematic reproductive servitude that powered the entire Egyptian empire. Alongside temples and monuments, another system quietly powered ancient Egypt's empire, one not built of stone, but of people. Hidden within records and ruins, lies a complex human hierarchy, a population management machine that assigned roles, defined value by biology, and controlled reproduction with unsettling precision. This wasn't incidental, it was intentional. Military campaigns were often designed not just to acquire land or wealth, but to capture specific types of people for integration into the state's labor and lineage systems. Young women were prized for fertility, strong men for physical labor and monitored companionship, and children for long-term cultural reshaping. The scale resembled a population program rather than a traditional slave economy. New arrivals were assessed upon capture, sorted by age, physical characteristics, and perceived reproductive value. Records from the period suggest state officials, scribes, and physicians maintained detailed documentation on the traits of these individuals and their descendants: strength, compliance, health, and appearance. Pairings were planned to optimize desired traits, not just for function, but for legacy. Some lineages were tracked over generations to produce ideal results: physically strong workers, loyal attendants, and ceremonial partners whose children could be raised in service of the crown. These decisions were made not by the people involved, but by bureaucrats overseeing what was, in effect, human livestock breeding. Men in this system were often restricted from family creation unless authorized. Some were permanently assigned to non-reproductive roles. Others were placed under ceremonial restraints to ensure control over when and with whom they could procreate. At the pinnacle of this structure stood the pharaoh's household, which included a vast assembly of women brought from across the empire through conquest or diplomacy. Though they lived in luxury, with rare fabrics, fine jewelry, and exotic food, their lives were tightly managed. Court physicians tracked their health and cycles, and court officials determined their future: who would become a consort, who would bear royal children, and who would remain in waiting. Over time, this system didn't just shape society, it reshaped identity. Children born into these roles were often raised to believe that participating in the system was a privilege. Internal rivalries began to form. Archaeological evidence points to palace intrigue among these women, fueled not by freedom, but by competition. Inscriptions and burial records suggest cases of sabotage, ritual poisoning, and interpersonal conflict within the royal compounds. These weren't simply survivors. Many became active players in a hierarchy that had once victimized their ancestors. The most disturbing truth isn't just that people were controlled, it's that the control became invisible. Over generations, what began as coercion became culture. But even this systemic control wasn't the most extreme expression of Egypt's obsession with divine order. Because to secure the cosmos itself, the royal family turned inward and rewrote the rules of blood, marriage, and creation itself. A young princess, barely 14, lies on golden linens inside the royal chambers of Akhetaten. She has been anointed with sacred oils made from lotus flowers, her skin dusted with gold, her hair adorned with pearls from the Red Sea. Outside the chamber, members of the royal court wait in silence for the ceremony to begin, a union that, to them, held the fate of the cosmos. This wasn't seen as abuse. This was considered one of the most sacred rites in all of ancient Egypt, a ceremonial marriage between a pharaoh and his daughter, believed to preserve divine blood and cosmic order. Elder women prepared the princess for her role, whispering religious guidance. You are becoming part of the eternal cycle. Through you, the flood will come. The land will live. The belief was rooted in creation mythology. According to sacred texts, the god Atum brought the world into existence by uniting with his own offspring. Pharaohs, as living gods, were expected to recreate that divine pattern to maintain cosmic harmony. Mixing royal blood with outsiders was thought to bring imbalance and even disaster. Amenhotep III entered into such a sacred union with his daughter Sitamun during a 7-day royal ceremony, marked by processions, temple blessings, and lavish tributes from across the empire: gold, incense, exotic animals. Ramesses II entered similar unions with multiple daughters, resulting in children who were simultaneously part of the next generation and a continuation of the same divine lineage. These events were immortalized in temple carvings, not as scandals, but as religious triumphs. But beneath the grandeur lay a biological cost. Modern medical scans of royal mummies revealed tragic consequences: skull deformities, cleft palates, twisted spines, severe genetic illnesses. Tutankhamun, a product of generations of intrafamilial unions, could barely walk by his late teens and died from what today would be considered a minor injury, his body too weakened to recover. What was believed to protect the royal bloodline was, in truth, silently destroying it from within. These 5 rituals expose a disturbing truth about human civilization. When power goes unchecked, even the most sacred beliefs can be used to justify complete control over the human body and mind. The ancient Egyptians saw themselves not as oppressors, but as enlightened. They built wonders that still inspire awe: pyramids, temples, timeless art, and groundbreaking science. And yet, behind that brilliance lay systems that demanded extreme loyalty, ritual obedience, and the complete surrender of personal autonomy. Ceremonies that appear divine to outsiders involved deeply invasive practices, performed publicly, enforced by religion, and embedded into everyday life. These weren't isolated excesses. They were part of a structured worldview, carried out with precision, protected by law, and celebrated in art. What makes them truly unsettling isn't just what happened, but how normalized it was. Millions participated without question. And that's the warning history offers us. It doesn't take chaos to create horror. It takes belief, structure, and silence. If these hidden truths challenged your view of the ancient world, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest corners. And tell us in the comments, which part of this legacy shocked you the most? Because remembering the past isn't just about dates and monuments. It's about seeing how far power can go when no one says no. As